Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 24 and Be With Me in the book of Romans. We're in a passage in Romans chapter 5, and I'm going to title today, Getting to Hope. And the concept here is we're going to follow Jesus to hope. Yesterday, we kind of followed Jesus to salvation, and the moment in time was when it was the moment in time when we didn't deserve it. Remember the passage. But God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, that's the when, Christ died for us. So we have to follow Jesus to salvation in a moment when we don't deserve it, when we're not shiny and bright. Today, we're going to talk more about, what happens after that? What happens in the walk of sanctification? So we're going to go from a moment that we didn't deserve, that is where God shows his love for us, and that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And we're going to go beyond that moment where we obtain it by faith, access it by faith, where God miscounts our faith and it's credited to us as righteousness. When after the time where we name and claim that primary reception where God credits and rescues and justifies and saves us from the wrath, in a sense, at that moment when we apply Jesus' death and his blood and his sacrifice to fix our biggest problem. So we're going to go from that single moment to a series of moments, a sequence of moments, and we're going to ask a big question, is what good is Christianity? So I understand what the good of Christianity is in the moment we talked about yesterday. That's salvation, that fixes death, that's great. So the question today, though, is what good is Christianity in this series of moments after the moment while we were yet sinners and Christ died for us? So what good is Christianity on a day-by-day basis? I'm going to tell a little story. I've told this one before. I heard this with my own 2 years, a Christian evangelizing to a non-Christian that I knew. And his quote to her was, "Become a Christian," and I'm quoting now, "become a Christian and all your problems will go away." Now, these were two young, inexperienced people, so I appreciate the heart behind it. But the problem with it is it's just not true. My experience with Christianity is more what it says in Romans chapter 5, which is after the person accesses this faith, verse 5:3, more than that, we rejoice in our sufferings. What? Sufferings? Yeah. Knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not put us to shame. Wait a minute. So you're talking about the Christianity is a hope factory, and the ingredients are character building, endurance, and a milieu of suffering? And then I want to jump down to verse 10. For if while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God. That talks about that moment of salvation. So if while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his Son, much more, now that we are reconciled, shall we be saved by his life. So I want to apply the series of moments that Jesus has, that is his life, to the series of moments that we have, which is our life, which is marked by not rainbows and puppies, it's marked by some suffering and some endurance and character production and hope. So the idea here is we want to get to hope. We want to move beyond the salvation moment and into the sanctification moment. And what good does Jesus' series of moments, that is his life, do for my series of moments, which is my life? And what truth do I need to apply this to today? So I would like to address those today, primarily people who are in the kingdom. If you're a believer, fantastic. I'm talking to you today. If you're not in the faith, listen to yesterday's podcast and access this, bend the knee, believe, receive him, and become in his family. That's all I got to say to you guys today. I'm talking to the people in the family here today, and this is a group of people who are supposed to be rejoicing in your sufferings. Oh my goodness. Why is that? Because we're getting to hope, and hope starts with reality, which is sufferings, the difficulties of life. Knowing that suffering produces something, which is endurance. Endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And what is hope? So I'm going to try to define it here today. So hope is this lockdown principle that we live our life from. It's this unassaultable fighter base that we launch our life off of. I'm thinking of the British bases on the Battle of Britain, where this you start from hope, this fighter base, and you fly off to defend your life and all these forays into the world, all the challenges, all the conflict. So we want to get to hope, get to the fighter base, and then stay there. And so the question I have for you today is, you probably have an area of your life, maybe your health, or maybe your relationship with fellowship, where these things, some suffering and some endurance and some character building, maybe in a relationship, maybe in providership. Under what are you suffering? Under what challenges do you have? Under what are you sort of attacked? What do you need to use your hope for? What's causing you to have to endure? What are you having to stand up under to produce these things, to produce the character, the hope factory, which relies on character and endurance and addressing these areas of suffering? So what can we look to Jesus in his moments, or his series of moments, his life, his temptations? So he dealt with all this as well. He's the example. Temptations, tongue, emotion, priorities, behavior, sexuality, all these things. Jesus is our example. So my prayer is that you would identify these areas in your life, and it shouldn't be too terribly hard, and that you would shoot towards hope, you would shoot towards rejoicing, that you would set your heart towards these things, in addressing the topics of suffering, endurance, character, and get to hope. So let's follow Jesus' life so that we can be saved by his life, as it says in verse 10. Let's get to hope and stay there today by following Jesus to hope. Thanks for listening.